What is up, guys, and welcome to my spoiler talk on I Know What You Did Last Summer, the 2025 requel. Now, I did do a full spoiler-free review where I got way more in-depth on my overall thoughts on the film, both good, bad, and ugly. So if you have not seen that, click up here and check that out, get an idea what I thought of the movie, then come back over here if you want my thoughts just specifically on some of the more spoilerific elements of this film. But if you've already seen that, or if you only care about hearing my thoughts on the spoiler stuff, let's get going.
Get the fuck out!
So the main three things that I want to talk about in this video is our surprise cameo, how our legacy characters were utilized, and of course the third act, the reveals of the killer, the motivation, everything like that. And to give you a bit of context, if you decided not to watch that spoiler-free review, I was not a fan of this film. Not to say that it was irredeemable, not like there wasn't any entertainment to be had, but I felt like it was a very, very badly written movie that just called a bunch of things into question. None of it made any sense. And a lot of the things that I was not able to get into in my spoiler-free review is some of the elements that bothered me the most. So this is going to be a very passionate video, we'll just say that. Nonetheless, let's talk about the Helen Shivers scene, because this was actually a pretty pleasant surprise. Now, if I was to place this in my review, I would say it would be in the mixed column, because on one hand, I don't really get the concept of this girl who's never met Helen Shivers. It doesn't necessarily have any tie to Helen Shivers, aside from the fact that she's quite literally like the new 2025 version of that character. I don't get the logic of her having this dream of her. That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. And the fact that it is a dream sequence is like, well, okay. Like, obviously she's dead, so that's the only way that you could bring her back. But why wouldn't it be one of our legacy characters having this dream instead of the new characters? And while, honestly, when I saw it in the theaters, I did not think that the de-aging looked bad at all. I thought they did a pretty good job. There are spots where you can definitely tell they're using the de-aging CGI. But, overall, I kind of liked this scene. It was a nice little surprise. You know, you have her, this Danica character, walking up behind somebody who's dressed up like Sarah Michelle Gellar did in the first film, and I was curious if it was going to be her, or if she was going to turn around and it was going to be like a skull, or it was going to be her looking at herself or something. And when she turned around and it was Sarah, I was like, oh, cool. You know, you kind of figured that she was going to be in this somewhere. I mean, Freddie Prinze Jr. is her husband, so if he's got a job working in here, of course, they would probably try to find a way to get her in there. Just makes sense. But I liked the scene overall. You know, I liked what she had to say to her. I think that Sarah Michelle Gellar looks great, and of course, it was nice to just have that character come back as the dead one of all of these legacy characters, to kind of give a little bit more information. Even though it wasn't like the best CGI effect, I didn't mind the deterioration into like the corpse or whatever. So decent scene there. I wish they could have found a way to bring it into the film in a way that would have been a little bit more sensical to me. But overall, the scene in and of itself, I liked. Now, as far as how the other legacy characters were utilized, and Julie James and Ray Bronson, I was underwhelmed and disappointed with how little Julie James we got in this movie, predominantly in the third act. Like, if you just want to have her sprinkled throughout the first two acts as like an expositionary character, that's fine as long as you're going to pay it off for those of us that are big fans of the original. And I just can't understand why we didn't get that. I'll elaborate more on that when I talk specifically about the third act, but you know, you have her come in as somebody that they just want to get some information from. And you have the scene where they approach her at college, or at least Ava approaches her at college. And I hated the two one-liner scenes that they gave her. They just made no sense. They were very cringeworthy to me. They just don't work in the context of this conversation, which that's one of my biggest problems with the movie overall, is the dialogue never felt real. It always felt like movie dialogue and things that people would never say in that moment. The people just don't talk that way. But you know, she tells her that, hey, my friends are being killed, and I got a letter saying I know what you did last summer, and a guy in a slicker's chasing us. And she's like, oh, yeah, very funny. And she's like, no, I'm for real. And you get the line where she goes up to her and she goes, I just have one question. What did you do last summer? Nope. Look, I don't remember, but I'm 90% sure that Ava never referenced that anything even happened last summer. So the fact that she just assumes like, oh, it's exactly the same as what happened to me. You must have had an accident last summer and you tried to hide it. miraculously it's the exact same situation. Very stupid. And then they follow that up immediately with the scene where she's giving her like the rules, like, look, it's somebody that you probably know and it's going to be very personal, so you can't hide and you can't run. You got to take the fight to them and take them out before they take you out. That doesn't work with this franchise. Okay, it's not like Jason Voorhees where there's like specific ways that you can kill him. It's not like Final Destination where there's a little pamphlet of rules that we have to follow and how you can cheat death or maybe escape death, and that's just getting handed down from generation to generation. There's no fucking rules with I Know What You Did Last Summer, especially since Ben Willis is obviously not the killer this time. So the whole logic of that conversation and the way that her lines were written, I just thought was ridiculous. I did like the introduction in her actual college class. I like where it shows her screaming like the final girl, and then she turns around with that smirk and she's just kind of putting on a show for her kids. Like, I liked that moment. Everything after that in that scene, or those couple of scenes, I thought was terribly written, like most of the rest of the film. So after that, you really just have her kind of sprinkled throughout the movie. With Ray, I think he was utilized better throughout the first two acts, where it made more sense, his place in this, because of his relationship to Stevie and the fact that he's really pushing for the town hall or whatever to acknowledge the events of 1997, and they need to do something this time instead of being like the fucking mayor in Jaws and trying to act like, oh, we're just going to carry on. Nothing to see here, people. So I liked his moments. I did think that Freddie Prinze Jr.'s performance was certainly a little stronger than it was in the first two films. I've always liked him, but I can admit he was never awesome in especially the first film. He was still very much green as an actor, so I thought he was pretty good here. The best scene that you get between these two is the scene where they're together. Shocker. I think what was cool about it is that they're in such different places as characters now than when we saw them in the first two films, that it was interesting to see them play off of each other given how different they are as characters. So you have Julie James that's sitting at home. She's getting her alarm system set off back and forth and thinking that the fisherman killer might be there, and then it turns out to be Ray. And, it was a funny line where she basically says, like, I thought somebody was here to hurt me, and it's even worse. It's you. I liked the drama that was in the scene where you have them not being on very good terms and him saying, hey, I was just given what's going on, I wanted to check on you. Are you doing okay? And then immediately turns to kind of berating her for the advice that she gave this new generation of kids about having to take the fight to the fisherman. And you get a tiny bit of an idea of maybe where they split, where it feels like Julie really embraced what happened to her and moved past it, and maybe Ray didn't. But that was one of my biggest issues with the way they were utilized, is that you can't just tell me as a fan of the original two films that, oh, they're divorced and they hate each other because we said so. You don't need to know why. Like, you can't just do that and have me accept it. You have to give me something to give some context to that. And it wouldn't even be that difficult. Give them one or two lines of dialogue in this exact scene to color that out more, and that issue goes away. But the fact that they are literally like opposites of who they were when we left them in 1998, and we're just supposed to make assumptions at how that happened and fill in the blanks ourselves. I don't need to be spoon-fed things, but the fact that they don't address it at all, I thought was ridiculous. Like, these are the characters that most of us are here to see this movie for. Don't just treat them as like these dispensable characters that we don't need to bother with any kind of development here. So that was the biggest disappointment for me, aside from where things eventually go in the third act. So, we'll get into that now. So the third act, you have, bodies are starting to drop left and right. And you have this situation where Stevie and Ava and Danica get onto Ray's boat and they head out trying to escape Southport. Ray stays behind. And as soon as they get out into the ocean, it's revealed pretty quickly through a couple of flashes of the investigation going on at this church and everything that Stevie is the fisherman killer. She pulls the hat off, has her little Scooby-Doo moment, her little James Bond villain moment, where she gives the motivation being that the person that they caused the accident and killed in the opening act of the film was actually somebody that was one of her loved ones. It was somebody involved with this church or her, NA group, AA group, her rehab, that kind of help put her life back together, and he was chasing after them, knowing that she was going off with her old friends to make sure she didn't relapse. And so because she lost her loved one, she wanted to cause that same pain to Danica and Ava by killing their loved ones. It's not a motivation that's insulting, but it's certainly not one that's like reinventing anything or any kind of like a cool, compelling motivation. But here's the problem. If that's your motivation, fine, but explain to me why the fisherman killer was trying to kill Ava and Danica earlier in the movie. If they're supposed to feel your pain and be the last ones left and, you know, have seen all of the carnage before they eventually meet you and get the hook, why were you chasing them and trying to kill them in the first and second act of the film? And there's so many moments like that in this script that just make no sense once you watch the third act of the movie, where you go back and go, okay, that doesn't add up. And of course, we'll add in the fact that, you know, I thought Stevie was going to be the fisherman killer from the first moment that she was introduced. Like, just the context of the scene where in the first act, they're this group of 4, and then they look over and are like, oh, that's our outsider friend. And just the tone of that whole introduction of her character felt off enough to put the spotlight on her as the rough around the edges one. And then after the accident, she's the only one that gives any sort of future motive, where she's like, I just put my life back together and this could destroy it again. Just that one line, I'm like, okay, well, of these 5 characters, if it's going to be one of them, which it probably will, she's the only one that's going to have any motive to be pissed in a year because her life's going to get fucked up from this. So thanks, movie. You made that pretty goddamn obvious. And if the red herrings throughout the movie were effective, I could have very easily had lost the scent of her and moved on to somebody else. But every single person, the podcast girl, the pastor guy, they were all so overcooked that it was obvious they were not going to be the killer. You know, Teddy's dad and everything like that. It was like, okay, yeah, definitely not. So it's probably her. And you get this confrontation where all 3 of them are now on the top of the boat, and Ray has his little dinghy and gets there. And so Ava and him come through, and he's pointing the gun at Stevie, trying to talk her down. And she ends up sticking the hook in Danica, throwing her over the edge. And then Ray shoots her, seemingly killing her, sending her over the edge. And then you immediately cut to Ava sending a voicemail to Julie James for some reason. Let's not call the cops. Let's not do any kind of reporting of what just happened, of saying, hey, we found out who the killer is, or like, hey, can we get some fucking rescue out here because my best friend just got thrown off into the ocean. None of that. No, let's just go hang out with Ray and send a little voicemail to Julie James. So Jennifer Love Hewitt picks up the phone. It's like, hey girl, it's Ava. You know, we just found out Stevie's the killer, but it's okay because, you know, Ray showed up and now we're just chilling at his bar. Love you, bye, beep. And for whatever reason, that voicemail makes Julie James go, oh, wait a minute. And she goes on the computer and types a few things and then runs away with a surprised look. And it shows this picture of Stevie standing next to Ray, like, you know, hugging him for a picture or whatever, which does not work whatsoever as a reveal for the audience when we have seen Stevie and Ray have a close relationship throughout the entire fucking movie. This is not like the first time they've been together where it's like, wait a minute, he acted like he didn't know her. No, they were close. He was her boss. They were together for like 4 different scenes in the movie. There's literally a point where he tells her, I promised your father that I was always going to look out for you and I'm going to keep that promise. So a very, very sloppily handled moment. But yeah, it directly leads you to the conclusion, added in with the next scene where she sees that he's got a bandage on his arm and she remembers wounding the fisherman killer, that Ray is the second killer. Now, I wish I could say that I was surprised by this, but much like with Stevie, they showed their hand incredibly overtly in the first act of the film, with the very second kill of the movie, when you have the podcast girl who's getting chased by the fisherman and he gets her and he's choking her and she pulls the hat off and she goes, you. Screenwriters, you did not introduce her character to any of the other main characters aside from Ava and her ex-boyfriend. And so the only two people that this podcast girl, who is very well versed in the 1997 killings and is only in Southport to further document them for her podcast, the only two characters that she would have that reaction for is Julie James and Ray Bronson. And I never believed for a second that Julie James was going to end up being the killer. So in that moment, as soon as she said you, I was like, is Ray the killer too? That'd be kind of a wild place to go. I hope you earn that. And before I even get into really talking about this, like, this is going to be the biggest element of this movie that makes or breaks it. I've seen some people hail it as this huge ballsy decision that makes it awesome and one of the best legacy sequels. I've seen other people saying it fucking destroyed the movie and it makes the original film worse, and it just a huge slap in the face for not only his character but fans. And I've seen a lot of, clips of Freddie Prinze Jr. talking about why he came back to this movie, because he's pretty notorious for turning down a lot of projects where I'm sure they wanted to do a She's All That sequel and he said no. I'm sure they wanted him to go back to Star Wars for his voice acting and he said no. And he basically tells the story of the director, the writer of this movie.
Yeah, Jen Robinson pitched me this movie, and you're right, this was going to be a pass, and Jen knew it. She was like, look, I know you don't want to do the movie, but let me just pitch you where these characters are at. And if you like that, let me pitch you my idea for the movie. And so we went and had brunch at this crummy little place on Santa Monica, and we didn't eat any of the food, and she pitched me the story of where she saw these characters, and I loved it. And then she pitched me the idea, which was wild, and her vision for this movie was so good, so good, that I signed on before there was even a script. I just knew they were going to pull it off based on what she told me.
I feel bad for him, because I'm sure the pitch, the idea of trauma has taken a hold of Ray so much, and they're in such different places where Julie was able to triumph over that and he was not. He ends up snapping and becoming the killer in this new film. The idea on paper of that could have been awesome. But the writing, like much of the rest of this film, absolutely lets it down, where it's just fucking ridiculous, and it's infuriating if you are a really dedicated fan to the original two films and love his character, because they don't earn it or explain it at all. So he locks Ava in his bar, starts chasing her around with this hook because he knows that she knows that he was also the killer, and eventually Julie James shows up just in time, where Ava has been wounded in the back. And now you get this confrontation between Julie James and Ray, where now he is the fisherman killer. Why the fuck was there not like a chase or a fight here? Why the fuck was there not any kind of action or thrills with this confrontation? You're going to have Julie James face off with her ex-husband, the guy that was her savior basically in the first two films, and they're just going to have like a little exchange of some goofy words and then that's it? What the fuck? So he gets his Scooby-Doo moment where, oh yeah, it's me. And my motivation is that they were really mean to Stevie. She had some friends that really treated her bad and it kind of messed her life up. So we decided to kill them all. The fuck? And he adds in like this a very direct meta type attempt here with this dialogue where he's like, they tried to erase us, Julie. They tried to make it like we didn't even exist. So I had to bring it back like 1997. Very clearly the writer's trying to be clever and trying to be meta, as if like I Know What You Did Last Summer as a franchise was trying to be erased or forgotten, like Scream and all these other franchises were just running rampant with requels and now we're here to reclaim our throne or something. Absolutely fucking ridiculous. So the fact that they're trying to be clever and it falls on their face is ridiculous, but just the motivation in and of itself. I'm sorry, that is, I don't buy it. That is not enough for me to buy that this character from the first two films would suddenly snap. Oh, because he saw a girl that their friends weren't the best of friends. Get the fuck out of here. Again, just a couple of tweaks to the writing could have sold the fuck out of this moment. A couple of things where you give more context to why they got divorced and why they're on opposite ends of the earth, where the events of the first two films, she was able to find the strength to move past it and use it for good or something like that. And he was just consumed by it. And the fact that she abandoned him and left him made it even worse. Like, there's ways that you could have very easily have sold me on this. I'm not somebody who adores the original film or his character where it's like, that's sacred ground for me. I am easily won over by something cool and ballsy like this. And even I was like, get the fuck out of here. You just fell on your face with that one. This ruined whatever little bit of goodness you had in this movie. So yeah, he confesses to her or whatever, and she gives that stupid fucking line from the trailer where she reuses the line from the first movie. What are you waiting for?
What are you waiting for?
And then she screams out, what are you waiting for, huh? Like, no, absolutely not. That does not work in that moment. I liked his line where he's like, this is going to hurt, sweetheart. But then we don't get a fight again. He just fucking gets shot with a harpoon. Just Ava takes him out and then Ray's out. Like, get the fuck out of here. Come on. Again, aside from that, let's go back to some of the issues that we had with Stevie's revelation and how it doesn't make sense with earlier parts in the film. Okay, fine. So Ray is the other killer. Why, whenever he got onto the boat and saw Stevie with Danica, who's pretty much, dead to rights there, and Ava right there, why didn't they just kill both of them right then and there? Why go through with this whole charade of pretending to kill Stevie while Danica goes overboard, and let's maybe let Ava live, and let's we'll just, I don't know, see if maybe we can get away with this. Like, what the fuck is the point of all of that aside from just because the movie needs you to do that? Can you make sense of that for me? Why would your two killers have two victims left and not just fucking take them out? And along those lines, again, just because the movie needs you to, if Ray feels like they're all kind of coming down on them, when he goes to confront Julie James and has that conversation where he's like, why are you telling them to fight back against the fishermen? Which in that moment, that's solidified for me that he was the killer, because it's like, why else would he have an issue with that unless he was the one running around doing this shit? Why wouldn't he just try to take out Julie James right then and there? Like, the plot in this film, the writing is so fucking bad. And then you have Ava and Danica give the worst scene in this entire film as the final scene, which is a tall order, but like, I don't know who the fuck wrote this specific scene or felt like this was a good way to end this film, but it was abysmal. Where you have these two characters that literally just went through hell, that just witnessed all this fucking carnage. Almost all of their friends and some of their family was just slaughtered. One of their best friends was just unmasked as a killer. They had another guy that ended up being this betrayal and another killer. Like, there's some crazy fucking shit that just happened. And yet they come outside and they're like, oh my God, like, I have not eaten in forever. And then they just sit down and they're like eating shrimp on the beach with their little fucking like nightgowns from the hospital, making quips and jokes about the events of the movie as if like nothing that significant happened. And it's like, what fucking tonal whiplash bullshit is this? They casually, there's a line where she's like, oh my God, did you hear that Stevie's still alive? What? That's crazy. You're just going to casually sequel bait me like that? Like, the fucking killer is still alive and they're just like, oh my God, weird. Oh, did you try this with the tartar sauce? It's so good. And then ending with the most ridiculous fucking line that it really pisses me off is in this film, because it's going to give certain people so much ammo. This is a type of movie that when I'm watching it, by the time I get to the third act, I'm like, okay, I can already see the writing on the wall. There's going to be certain people out there that are going to say that this is like a man-hating movie, that like all the men are evil and all the men suck and all the men are the ones that get killed, and it ends up being like a girl power movie. And there's certainly elements in the story that I could understand leading somebody down that path, and nowadays it really doesn't take a whole lot. But when you get the explanation from Stevie of why she was killing, the boyfriends and the fiancés, to me that kind of washed away that, where I'm like, okay, it's a part of the plot, so there shouldn't be anything that inflammatory or that controversial about the fact that the women are left alive at the end, and the Ray, the legacy character who's a man, ends up being the fucked up one or anything like that. Like, okay, they explained it away in their plot, so hopefully that's not like a big narrative that takes over. And so far, it doesn't seem like it has been a big one, but I've seen it. But then you get this line where these two surviving characters go, it's crazy. All of this could have been avoided if men just went to therapy. What the fuck does that mean? Like, first of all, what exactly kind of statement, what are you trying to say about men's mental health in that moment anyway, that's even relevant? But two, even if you're trying to make like a joke, it doesn't really make any fucking sense when the lead killer of the film was a woman. The one that kicked off all these events, the one that actually drew Ray in to be a killer and make him go down the dark path, was a woman. It wasn't like Ray was the mastermind here. So I hated that fucking line. I thought it was stupid. I thought that it made no sense in the moment. And when I heard it, I was like, well, there you go. That's all that crowd will need to now call this the man-hating movie. And you know, oh my God. Like, it pisses me off when you have movies, you know, there's so many movies nowadays that either get called woke or, you know, girl power, girl boss or whatever, that don't merit that ridiculous criticism at all. There are some that do, you know, Black Christmas 2019, looking at you, but there's so many that don't merit it. But when you have a film that literally just throws the chum in the water, it's like, why? Why did we need that? That made no fucking sense. It was in there for no reason whatsoever. And all you accomplished was validating that stupidity. All you did was validate that ridiculousness that now we have to hear about every time we talk about this film. So, yeah, you have that. And that's the end of your film. That's the end of it until the mid-credits scene. And I think anybody that knew that there was a mid-credit scene here knew exactly what was going to be given here. Like, there's only one card to play. And so you see Brandy and her character from the second film, Julie James's roommate, sitting there with her husband, presumably, watching the news report where it shows the events of the third act of the film, where Ray is unmasked as the killer, and he tried to kill Julie James, the survivor of the 1997 massacre. And, you know, there was a cute line where she's like, everybody's always trying to kill that girl. And then you have a knock at the door. Ooh, I wonder who that's going to be. And you open it up and you see Julie James in like this badass leather jacket and a ball cap. And she comes in like fucking Nick Fury. And she's like, look, I'm glad you're okay. I got this note. And the note says, it's not over. And it's a picture of them from the second film with a big X crossing out Brandy's character. And Brandy says, who we fucking up this time? And Julie James says, that's what I was hoping you were going to say. First of all, fuck you. If they come out with another movie and it's significantly better than this one, cool. I will still be there day one and I will hope that it will be better. But the ridiculousness of that type of sequel bait to me, just, again, there's a reason why I said it's like a Nick Fury moment. It's like the Avengers Assemble moment of I know what you did last summer, which get the fuck out of here. But beyond that, that moment doesn't work as having Julie James be like this badass final girl who's going to assemble the badass final girls of this film when she didn't fucking do anything in this movie. You didn't give her badass final girl moment in this movie. If she had kicked the shit out of Ray and it was this big badass fight and she fucked him up and, you know, put the hook through him or something like that, then you can sell this moment. But having her show up with like this badass leather jacket and the fucking Unabomber hat, like she's about to wreck shit, or, you know, Stevie, whoever the fuck presumably is sending her this note, is about to get their ass whooped. You didn't sell me on that at all in this movie. So how the fuck am I supposed to have faith that you're going to do that in the next movie? I can't believe I'm getting this passionate and this heated about an I Know What You Did Last Summer movie. Like, I have never held the original two in that high of a regard, and yet I'm sitting here like this very offended fan. Oh my God. Okay. So, well, I mean, look, been talking for about 30 minutes, and that's pretty much all I have to say about the spoiler side of this film. Like, I thought the third act was ridiculous in many different ways. Either the writing, especially with the dialogue, was just as bad, if not worse, than the rest of the film. Both of the killer identities were obvious, and one of them was pretty offensive of a move. Like, people are calling it ballsy, and like, here's my last point that I'll end on. It's not ballsy if it doesn't work. Okay, if you had Ray as the killer reveal and it was this really well-written moment that actually makes sense and it ties back to who he was as a character in the first two, and it's this really natural progression that you can see as a fan, hell yes, that's a ballsy move. There hasn't really been, or maybe none, of the horror franchises that have tried this yet. Probably for good reason. But yeah, we can give credit. That was ballsy. But if you fall on your fucking face when you do it, it's not ballsy. It's just stupid. Okay? It's like watching an episode of Jackass. Is it ballsy that Steve-O sticks a piece of raw chicken in his ass and then jumps into an alligator pit? If he makes it out and it's fun, yeah. If he gets fucking mauled and rolled and killed in the goddamn process, it's not ballsy, it's just fucking stupid. So anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts on all of these different aspects of this film. Did you have the same reaction that I did? Did you react even harsher? Were there even something else I didn't bring up here that's a good or a bad element of all this? Let me know down below, and we'll wrap up this conversation on this massively disappointing film. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, please click over here for all of my I Know What You Did Last Summer reviews. I'm also going to put my review of the most recent film up here directly if you just want to catch up on my thoughts on the movie we're talking about. Like, share, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss everything in the future. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.